In school, they told us that America was founded on freedom, justice, and equality, that the founding fathers were heroes, that the revolution was pure and noble. But what if I told you? Most of that was a carefully crafted myth. While the Declaration of Independence spoke of liberty, the very men who signed it, like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, owned slaves. The land they called theirs was stolen, taken from Native Americans through violent, broken treaties and forced removals. So, why don't they teach us that part? Why does our history start with fireworks instead of funerals? This is the real story of how America was built, not on freedom, but on blood. After the Revolution, America was free, but not for everyone. Millions of black men, women, and children were still enslaved, treated not as humans but as property. Families were ripped apart. People were whipped, branded, even killed legally. This wasn't just the South. Northern states profited too, through slave trade, insurance, banking, and industries built on black labor. In 1857, the Supreme Court declared that black people had no rights which the white man was bound to respect. That wasn't ancient history. That was just over 150 years ago. And when slavery finally ended, it didn't mean freedom. It meant Jim Crow, a system of legal segregation that lasted nearly 100 years. Black Americans couldn't vote, couldn't marry who they wanted, couldn't drink from the same fountains, and if they protested. Lynchings weren't just violence, they were public events. Crowds gathered, newspapers advertised them. Children watched, no one was punished. So the next time someone says slavery was a long time ago, remember this: your grandparents lived through segregation. Your parents lived through its aftermath. And today, its shadow still exists. History doesn't repeat itself, but it often... History isn't just what happened, it's how it's remembered. And for centuries, powerful people controlled the narrative. But then came voices who refused to stay silent. Writers who picked up their pens like weapons and used truth as ammunition. Frederick Douglass was born into slavery but taught himself to read. His autobiography shook the nation. For the first time, white Americans were forced to confront the horror through the eyes of someone who lived it. Then came Harriet Beecher Stowe. Her novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin, sold over 300,000 copies in its first year. Abraham Lincoln reportedly said, "So you're the little lady who started this great war." Mark Twain used humor and satire to expose racism and hypocrisy in books like Huckleberry Finn, now one of the most banned books in America. And during the Harlem Renaissance, voices like Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, and Claude McKay used poetry, novels, and music to fight back against a society that refused to see them as equal. These weren't just writers, they were warriors, revolutionaries, risking everything to tell stories America wanted to erase. And even now, their words echo louder than ever. Before America had its own voice, it borrowed one. Early colonists were shaped by British ideals. They brought with them not just guns and religion, but books, philosophies, and a way of thinking. Shakespeare, John Milton, and the King James Bible were considered sacred texts. These weren't just stories, they were moral blueprints, tools for shaping minds. The Puritans who settled in New England believed they were God's chosen people, sent to build a city upon a hill, but their vision of purity meant exclusion. If you were different, in race, belief, or behavior, you didn't belong. Schools in early America were modeled after English systems, and literature became a tool of identity. What was considered civilized, good, or moral came straight from British pens. This is why, for decades, American students read mostly British authors, and why Black, Native, and women's voices were left out. Even today, many high school reading lists are dominated by European voices. The question is, whose version of truth are we still teaching? Literature isn't neutral. It tells us who matters and who doesn't. We like to believe that history is behind us, that the worst is over. that we've moved on, but the truth is, the past never really goes away. It lives in our schools, our laws, our books, and in our silence. Redlining, mass incarceration, racial profiling, these aren't ancient problems. They're modern legacies. Why are some communities still underfunded? Why do certain names trigger fear? Why are some voices still not heard in classrooms, boardrooms, or ballot boxes? Because America was built with imbalance baked into the blueprint. And unless we understand that history, the real history, we're just repeating it in disguise. Pause, lower music slightly. You've just seen the version of America they rarely show you. Now, it's your turn. Share this video, talk about it, and hit subscribe because we're not done uncovering the truth. This is American History Files, and the story has just begun.